Your decade is not written by chance. It is written by choices. Not the dramatic choices only, but the quiet ones. The choice to get up when you said you would. The choice to keep your word when no one is watching. The choice to focus when distraction feels easier. The choice to rest without quitting. The choice to move forward even while you're still unsure. Most people think life changes because of one giant opportunity, one lucky moment, or one perfect connection. But real change is built in smaller places. It is built in the unseen yes and no's that shape your habits. Every time you say yes to discipline, you strengthen your future. Every time you say no to comfort that weakens you, you protect your future. Every decision is a brick. Build enough of the right bricks, and your decade becomes something solid, something meaningful, something you can stand on with pride. That is why small decisions matter more than people admit. One yes to studying when you feel tired can change your skill. One no to scrolling can save an hour. One yes to asking the hard question can change your direction. One no to the wrong crowd can protect your peace. People wait for a big breakthrough, but sometimes the breakthrough is hidden inside the next ordinary choice. The next meal, the next conversation, the next hour, the next habit, the next response to pressure. If your life feels stuck, do not only ask what is wrong with the outcome. Ask what has been repeated, because repetition builds identity, and identity eventually builds destiny. You're not trapped by a single mistake. You are shaped by what you repeat after the mistake. A strong decade begins when you stop treating every day like a random event and start treating it like a vote for the person you are becoming. This is where the power of yes and no becomes serious. Yes is not just agreement. Yes is direction. Yes to a task means you are willing to move. Yes to growth means you are willing to be uncomfortable. Yes to truth means you are willing to stop hiding. Yes to patience means you are willing to let the process work. No is also powerful. No to laziness. No to the urge to quit early. No to comparing your path with someone else's. No to every thought that tries to shrink your future. A decade is built on the strength of your boundaries. People often think boundaries are about keeping others out, but they're also about keeping your own future in. Every useful no protects your yes. Every useful no clears space for what matters. If you want a decade that looks different from your past, you must learn to become serious about your yes and your no. That means not every opportunity deserves you. Not every invitation deserves your time. Not every thought deserves your energy. The more carefully you choose, the more powerful your life becomes. Your mornings are one of the first places your decade is decided. How you begin shapes how you think. How you think shapes how you act. How you act shapes what you build. A morning filled with noise often leads to a day filled with drift. A morning filled with intention leads to a day with direction. You do not need a perfect morning routine. You need a meaningful one. Something that tells your mind, this day matters. Maybe you sit quietly for a few minutes. Maybe you write your priorities. Maybe you move your body. Maybe you read something useful. Maybe you start with the hardest task instead of the easiest distraction. Whatever it is, make your first yes of the day a serious one, because the first decision often lowers or raises the standard for everything that follows. If you begin with distraction, your mind learns to drift. If you begin with purpose, your mind learns to focus. This is not about being rigid. It is about being intentional. You are not trying to control every second. You're trying to protect the first steps of the day so the rest of the day can stand on something strong. The same is true for your standards. Your standards are the silent laws of your life. They tell you what you will accept and what you will not. They decide what you tolerate. They decide what you repeat. They decide how much of your potential gets used. Low standards are expensive because they slowly train you to accept less from yourself. They make you easier to distract, easier to excuse, easier to delay. But high standards are not about perfection. They are about respect. Respect for your time. Respect for your effort. Respect for the future you want to create. If your standard says, I follow through, then follow through. If your standard says, I learn before I quit, then learn before you quit. If your standard says, I do hard things, then do hard things without making a drama out of it. Standards create identity because they are repeated expectations. You become what you repeatedly require from yourself. A decade filled with strength does not come from one emotional moment. It comes from living by standards that are higher than your excuses. That is how people become dependable. That is how people become resilient. That is how people become someone they can trust. You also need to pay attention to your environment, because your environment votes on your behalf every day. The people around you, the content you consume, the places you sit, the conversations you allow, the habits you repeat, all of it shapes your choices. If your environment is full of chaos, your mind has to fight harder just to stay clear. If your environment is full of distraction, your focus has to work harder just to survive. If your environment is full of low expectations, your growth becomes harder to protect. That does not mean you need a perfect setting before you can change. It means you need to become intentional about what you allow close to you. Some things will drain you if you keep them near. Some voices will weaken you if you keep listening. Some habits will keep you stuck if you keep feeding them. A wise person learns to remove friction from the right habits and add friction to the wrong ones. Keep your goals visible. Keep your distractions less available. Keep your phone from becoming a trap. Keep your space cleaner than your excuses. When your environment supports your values, your decisions get easier. When your environment fights your values, every yes becomes heavier. So build a place that helps you become who you say you want to be. Focus is another decision that defines a decade. Attention is life. Wherever it goes, your energy follows. If your attention is divided all day, your results will be divided too. If your attention is scattered, your progress will feel weak. The world constantly tries to steal your focus with noise, alerts, opinions, entertainment, and urgency that is not always real. You have to learn how to protect your attention like it matters, because it does. One focused hour can do more than 5 distracted ones. One deep work session can move your life farther than an entire day of half effort. Focus is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things well enough to matter. It is the habit of saying no to what pulls you away from your priorities. It is the habit of staying with one task until it is done. It is the decision to become harder to distract than you used to be. That is a powerful change. A focused person does not need constant hype to make progress. They create their own momentum by staying with the work. And once momentum starts, confidence rises with it. You begin to see that you can build, you can finish, you can stay. That kind of evidence changes a decade. Discipline is what makes focus repeatable. Discipline is the part of you that says, I do not need perfect feelings to do the right thing. I do not need a perfect mood to keep moving. I do not need perfect conditions to make progress. Discipline is not punishment. It is training. It is the strength to act according to the life you want, not according to the impulse you feel. That is why discipline feels hard at first. It asks you to move beyond comfort. It asks you to continue when emotion wants to stop. But every disciplined action becomes proof. Proof that you can handle yourself. Proof that you can keep promises. Proof that you can do difficult things without needing applause. The more proof you gather, the less fragile your confidence becomes. People with weak discipline often wait for motivation to arrive before they move. People with strong discipline move first and let motivation catch up later. That difference changes everything. One life is led by mood. The other is led by purpose. One life drifts. The other builds. If you want your decade to look different, make discipline a daily habit, not a once-in-a-while burst. That is where strength becomes real. Courage is another yes you must practice. Courage does not mean you feel no fear. It means fear no longer gets to make every decision. So many good lives stay small because people keep waiting to feel brave before they act. But bravery usually arrives after action, not before it. You speak, you apply, you begin, you try, you risk the awkward first step. Then you discover that fear was loud, but not fatal. Courage grows every time you do something your old self would have delayed. Courage grows every time you keep going after an uncomfortable moment. Courage grows every time you tell the truth instead of hiding behind silence. The more courage you practice, the more your life expands. Doors you once avoided begin to look possible. Challenges you once feared begin to look manageable. The self-doubt that once controlled you starts to lose authority. Courage is not about becoming reckless. It is about becoming willing. Willing to learn. Willing to be seen. Willing to be corrected. Willing to start again. A decade shaped by courage will not be perfect, but it will be powerful. Because courage keeps you in motion, and motion is where growth lives. You also need patience, because the results of your yes and no do not always show up immediately. This is where many people become discouraged. They make one better choice and expect their life to change at once. They cut one bad habit and expect their whole future to open overnight. But real growth takes time to compound. Patience is the strength to stay loyal to the process when the reward is still far away. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active trust. It is the decision to keep doing what matters, even when the harvest is not visible yet. The seed does not become a tree instantly. The habit does not become a lifestyle instantly. The discipline does not become an identity instantly. Time matters. Repetition matters. Faithfulness to the process matters. A patient person understands that some of the best things in life are slow to appear because they're being built to last. They do not panic when progress feels small. They keep showing up. They keep planting. They keep refining. That is how a strong decade is formed. Not by rushing every outcome, but by staying consistent long enough for the results to become undeniable. Pressure will come, and when it does, resilience is the answer. Resilience is not pretending life is easy. It is not denying pain. It is not acting like failure never hurts. Resilience is the decision that pain will not be your final story. It is the ability to stand back up after a setback and keep moving with wisdom. It is the ability to learn from what broke your expectations instead of letting it break your character. Every person who builds something meaningful will eventually face pressure. The pressure of waiting, the pressure of rejection, the pressure of uncertainty, the pressure of wanting more and not seeing it yet. Resilience protects your progress in those moments. It says, this is difficult, but I am still here. This is slow, but I'm still working. This is painful, but I am still capable. When resilience becomes part of you, failure loses some of its power. You stop fearing to fall so much because you know how to get back up. You stop seeing setbacks as proof that you should quit. You begin seeing them as part of the training. That mindset is essential for a successful decade, because the path to success is rarely smooth. It is often uneven, but resilient people keep walking. Self-trust is one of the biggest rewards of making better decisions. Every yes and no is a message to yourself. Every time you keep a promise, you tell your mind that your word matters. Every time you break a promise, you tell your mind that your word is optional. Over time, those messages shape how much you trust yourself. And trust is powerful. A person who trusts themselves acts with less hesitation. They recover faster. They worry less about whether they can handle the next step because they already have evidence. Self-trust is built through repetition, not through wishful thinking. Keep the promise to wake up. Keep the promise to finish. Keep the promise to stop when rest is needed and continue when work is needed. The small promises matter more than people think. They teach your brain that you are dependable. That dependence on yourself is what makes confidence sturdy instead of fragile. If you're tired of doubting yourself, begin by keeping tiny commitments. One day at a time, one decision at a time. That is how self-trust becomes real. And once self-trust grows, your decade starts to feel less like a gamble and more like a structure you can believe in. You will also need to learn the power of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls built to keep life away. They are gates that decide what gets access to your energy. A strong decade requires strong gates. Not every opportunity is worth your time. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every request deserves your yes. Not every mood deserves a response. Boundaries help you protect what matters from what drains you. They keep you from pouring energy into people, habits, or commitments that weaken your future. A person without boundaries often feels exhausted because their life is constantly being pulled in too many directions. But a person with healthy boundaries has room to focus, room to grow, room to recover, and room to build. That is not selfish. That is wise. Every strong life has limits. Limits on distractions. Limits on excuses. Limits on emotional leakage. Limits on what gets to shape the direction of the day. When you learn to say no with clarity, your yes becomes more meaningful. That is a powerful lesson for your decade. You do not need to accept everything to prove you are kind. You need to protect what is important so your kindness and your purpose can survive. Your thoughts are also making decisions for you before you realize it. The mind speaks constantly. Sometimes it speaks truth, and sometimes it repeats old fear. Sometimes it encourages, and sometimes it sabotages. So you must learn to listen carefully. A thought is not always a command. A feeling is not always a fact. A memory is not always a prophecy. If your inner voice keeps saying you are behind, you must question that voice. If it keeps saying you are too late, you must question that voice. If it keeps saying you're not the kind of person who changes, you must question that voice. The mind is trainable. You can teach it to think differently through repetition, truth, and action. That means replacing destructive thoughts with better ones is not fake positivity. It is mental discipline. It is choosing a more useful truth. The truth may be that you are still learning. The truth may be that the road is slow. The truth may be that you have work to do. But the truth also may be that you are still standing, still capable, still able to choose again. That is not small. That is the beginning of a better decade. Identity is where all of this comes together. You become what you repeatedly choose. You become the person who keeps saying yes to growth, or the person who keeps saying yes to delay. You become the person who protects their future, or the person who keeps handing it away. Every decision shapes identity. A small choice made consistently becomes a signature. A signature becomes a lifestyle. A lifestyle becomes a story people can see. If you want a decade that reflects strength, then your identity has to match that strength. Start seeing yourself as someone who follows through, someone who learns from discomfort, someone who can be trusted with responsibility, someone who is not ruled by impulse, someone who keeps moving even when the path is slow. That self-image matters because people tend to move toward the story they believe about themselves. If you see yourself as careless, you will act carelessly. If you see yourself as disciplined, you will begin living differently. Identity is not built in a day. It is carved by repeated choices. That means you're not stuck with the identity you have right now. You can shape a stronger one. One yes, one no, one day, one decade. There will be seasons where the right choice feels harder than the wrong one. In those seasons, remember that comfort is often expensive later. The easy yes can become the costly regret. The easy no can become the lost opportunity. The short-term relief can become long-term pain. That is why wisdom matters. Wisdom is the ability to look beyond the moment and ask what this choice is building. Is this yes creating strength or weakness? Is this no protecting my future or shrinking it? Is this habit helping me become who I want to be? A wise person does not need every moment to be emotionally comfortable. They need it to be directionally correct. That is a stronger way to live. It keeps you from trading the future for the feeling of the hour. And the hour always passes. The choice remains. So let your choices carry the weight of your future. Let them say something true about the person you are becoming. A decade filled with wise choices becomes a decade that looks different in the best way. The story of your life is not written all at once. It is written decision by decision, yes by yes, no by no. That means today is not a small thing. Today is a page. Today is a vote. Today is a brick. Today matters because it shapes the next day. And the next day shapes the month. And the month shapes the year. And the year shapes the decade. This is why you cannot afford to be careless with your choices. Not because you need to fear life, but because you need to respect it. Your future deserves that respect. Your potential deserves that respect. The person you are becoming deserves that respect. You do not need to change everything overnight. You need to change what you repeat. Choose the harder right more often. Choose the cleaner path more often. Choose the stronger habit more often. Choose the better thought more often. Choose the calmer response more often. Those choices will not always feel dramatic, but they will be powerful. Over time, they will create a life that reflects who you really are and who you are willing to become. So do not wait for a perfect moment to begin deciding better. The perfect moment is often just another name for delay. Begin now. Start with the next yes. Start with the next no. Start with the next honest step. Start with the next boundary. Start with the next disciplined hour. Start with the next choice that would make your future self proud. The map of achievement is not hidden in luck. It is hidden in the decisions you make when nobody is clapping. That is where the decade is shaped. That is where character is built. That is where resilience grows. That is where confidence is earned. If you feel behind, use this moment. If you feel stuck, use this moment. If you feel tired, use this moment. A better decade begins with one better decision, then another, then another. Stay with the process long enough, and one day you will look back and realize that your story changed, not because of one huge event, but because you learned how to say yes to what builds you and no to what breaks you. That is how strong lives are made. That is how a decade becomes worth remembering. And remember, the right decisions are never wasted. Even if the result is slow, the decision still shapes you. Even if nobody notices, the decision still strengthens you. Even if the outcome is not immediate, the decision still becomes part of your character. That is the hidden reward of a decade built well. You do not just get more success. You become more capable of holding it, more steady when it arrives, and more peaceful while it grows. So keep choosing in ways that honor the future. Keep choosing even when your emotions argue for comfort. Keep choosing even when the old version of you wants to retreat. Keep choosing because each choice is teaching your mind what kind of life is possible. One day you will see that the habits you repeated quietly became the reputation you carry loudly. The discipline no one applauded became the strength everyone can feel. The boundaries you defended became the peace you now protect. The courage you practiced became the confidence you now trust. That is the map. That is the road. That is the work. You're not building randomly. You're building a decade. And the decade is being shaped right now by the yes and no's you choose today. Make them count. Make them strong. Make them honest. Make them the kind of decisions that tell your future, I was ready to grow, and I did not waste a chance. The next chapter is always waiting for the person willing to decide differently. If you keep showing up, your life will keep responding. That is the quiet miracle of discipline and direction together. Do not underestimate the power of ordinary days. Ordinary days are where the future gets its shape. Ordinary days are where your standards speak. Ordinary days are where your habits tell the truth. When you're tempted to think that nothing important is happening, remember that the decade is built in ordinary hours. A wise yes today may protect you from regret tomorrow. A wise no today may preserve your peace for years. That is why your choices matter so much. They are never just about this moment. They are about the person you are rehearsing becoming. Keep rehearsing strength. Keep rehearsing focus. Keep rehearsing patience. Keep rehearsing courage. Keep rehearsing the life you want until it feels natural to live it. That is how change becomes real. Not by wishing, but by repeating. Not by hoping, but by deciding. Not by waiting, but by moving. Your decade is listening to every choice. Speak to it with intention. Your life grows where your decisions grow stronger each day.